Well, thanks for being here, Lisa.
Yeah.
I always like to start these episodes just by, getting to know each other a little bit and asking you a bit about your career journey so far, because so many job seekers, and I've kind of been talking about this in our previous episodes, seem to think that they'll graduate and then they'll be in their dream job, but there's so many stops along the way. So I'm just curious, what kind of stops have you made along the way to kind of get where you are today? Do you mind telling us a little bit about your journey so far?
Yeah, I'm happy to share and I'm happy to be here. So I would say I am one of those people who thought that was the plan.
Right.
My parents were a CPA and a school teacher, so they basically did pick a path early on and follow one path. So I thought I would do that. But I thought I would work in marketing. That's what I was studying in college. And I've never actually done that, at least not directly. So throughout my college experience, I really got involved with that, the people element of the college experience in particular. So I ended up going to graduate school for higher education administration, studying that, and then being able to find different jobs along the way there. Most of those jobs also actually by chance. So I worked with
Uh,
orientations, the student experience. Then I made a shift into graduate admissions, and then over to career coaching. So the people is the link between all of those things,
right.
right? And so just really being able to say, that is my through line, is making connections to people and an experience, which I suppose reflecting back is a lot of what marketing is, just doing it in a different way and thinking of people. So being open to conversations and looking at, where am I living, or where does my family want to live? What jobs are available at the time? That's really how I got jobs. So it definitely wasn't a mapped out, this is going to be the plan and I'm going to follow it. But, do we need to move? Do we want to move? This last move was for personal reasons, to be closer to family and grow our family close to that. So that's like, well, we know the destination of where we're going. Now let's look and see what's there. And it's just really ebbed and flowed to be able to find opportunities. And then in the last 2.5 years, I switched from a more traditional higher ed environment to an ed tech company. So more of that corporate ed tech, but also seeing the relational components there and saying, I appreciate innovation. Let's see what transferable skills I have and how I can do that. So I would say, if someone said, what are you going to be until the end of the time that you work? I probably still can't answer that question, but I can accept that I don't need to know that, but I can know that I'm in the right place for now. So that's usually what I try to tell people who are finding jobs. Like, pick for now. The world is changing, the world is interesting. Let's not have so much stress maybe about the, 20-year trajectory.
That's super helpful. And I'm always glad I asked that question, because I think it is going to just let people relax a little, and causes a lot of relief that, hey, it doesn't have to be mapped out. And there's so much that happens in between, where you are now and, where, you're starting, that you kind of need to experience things to figure out what comes next. And geography is something I haven't actually heard anyone touch on yet, but it makes so much sense. Where do you want to be? Is it around family or friends? Is it climate based? Um, so what was it like for you kind of moving somewhere new? How did you go about searching for roles? Did you do that before you left, or was that something you did once you got where, you settled in?
So across my career, I have actually done both.
Okay.
And so one was ready to move to a location for my husband and I, that we just felt like we weren't in the right place for us. So that was a looking for both. Where could we move? So we literally did a, where are places we would both like to live, sort of
Yeah.
geography first kind of approach, and then see which one of those places yields a job first.
Okay.
So,
Oh,
then you're looking at, okay, this was before remote work was really a thing. So then we were really looking at, well, what companies are there? What could we do? And then just really seeing from there. So we didn't even visit all the places that we looked at. We just looked at what we knew of places or if we had friends there, or certainly family. So that was one approach. Then when we knew we were moving to be closer to family, we did well, we're just going to move first and then we're going to see what jobs are there, because we knew for sure that we wanted to be in this location. So, I think a lot of it, again, with remote or hybrid work, you can have a few more options now. But to me, it came back to life stage and values. So work is a huge part of life, but one part, and we know this is where we want to go, and we believe we are going to places where we can find those options. So I live in the Research Triangle area in North Carolina, so enough companies here that we could find something. So we did know that would be possible. But yeah, we've actually done a lot of geography has had a big impact, in fact, and it does change what you're looking for because there might be a job, but if it's not in a place that you want to move, then maybe it's not the right time, especially if it's an in-person job. So it can be a big factor.
100%. And I think it's one that doesn't get talked about often, but it's such an important variable. And I think it's interesting, and again, just clarifying to hear that, the process you took to navigate it, because sometimes I think once you've done it, you're kind of like, yeah, of course, that's the way you would do it. But for people who are thinking about, wanting to be close to family or friends, or just wanting to not, have a super cold winter, it can be like, well, how do I even start thinking about that? So I really appreciate kind of
Yeah.
hearing the process you went through. And also the fact that, yeah, work is one part of life. And once you kind of know, for instance, that you want to be somewhere, you can go there and figure it out. So I think that's helpful to hear as well, Lisa. So thanks for sharing that insight. I want to take a step back kind of now earlier, where you talked about kind of starting off being interested in marketing. And, I think a lot of job seekers start that way. They have that initial interest and then they start taking jobs along the way for different reasons. So those first couple jobs you took that you kind of said you stumbled into, um, did people tell you about those opportunities, or did you go looking for them, or how did they surface? I'm just curious if there's something we can suggest to people so that they can stumble into some of those opportunities too.
Yeah, so I definitely did have a lot of conversations with people. So, in college, really liking the college experience, I went to the people who were the staff who led the things I did. So, who led orientation, who led the volunteer programs. And I said, how did you get your job?
Ah,
Was this a path that you took? And they basically are the ones who opened my eyes that there are graduate degrees in higher ed administration. I didn't even know that was a thing. They
yeah.
told me about the schools that they went to. They told me other schools they had considered. So that actually started my path. I really didn't know that there was so much structure in terms of, oh, you can go and study this more to really understand, like the psychology behind it or the practicalities behind it. So that I wasn't thinking of going to grad school. That also opened up that door and led me to a lot of other schools. And then in grad school, same thing, talking with other people who did basically any job on a college campus. I was trying to figure out, well, what are those? What do you actually do? And so a lot of my school assignments made us have to talk to people. So that sort of sparked that. What is that office really for? But that really led to, okay, in my personality, will I like, this or that? And so I was open to a lot of different things when I started my career. So I basically was one of those, I know the big picture. I guess you could say I knew the industry being higher ed, but I feel like I could do most any kind of job there that I'm qualified for, and I'm open to it. So I applied for a lot of different types of jobs at the beginning.
Nice.
Um, and I'm really glad I did that because it opened up different opportunities. It allowed me to look at more different types of schools and things. And again, like I said, I've ended up jumping to what would be different job functions throughout my career. And I don't know, you know, if I would have started somewhere different, would I end up in career coaching? It's like, who knows? Maybe, maybe not. But it was based on either the school or this job seems like a great opportunity. And again, when we added in geography, like, well, this one's available now in the place we might want to go. So let's try for that too. So just still even being open, I see a lot of crossover between. And I think that's an important thing when you can take that step back and look at transferable skills, you see more options available. But often that comes from conversations, and that definitely did with me. Even moving from admissions to career, I was encouraged by a colleague because that was within the same institution. I was encouraged by colleagues like, you can do this. We've seen you on this side. You should apply. So even, halfway into my career, I was questioning it, but that conversation is what led me to even apply to make that leap. So I think conversations are key because we only know so much. Even with the internet and AI and all of these tools, we, only know so much, and we only have maybe our perspective coming from our influences, and hearing some other experience has been really valuable for me.
You said exactly what I was just thinking, and it's that, yeah, you really only can take so much from a job posting or, an explanation of what a role is going to be like. And until you get into it and meet the people who do that work, it's really hard to tell. So
Yeah.
I'm again just really thankful that you've kind of encouraged people to try these things, because that's where you get to know the day to day and the kind of people you'll end up working with. But also you'll meet these people who can do what they did for you, it sounds like, and say, hey, I can see you're good at this thing. You should check out this other opportunity. And that's where, new exciting things can come from. Uh, but I also think it's really helpful that you reminded people to actually talk to the people who have the job. I'm not sure why that doesn't, come to mind for job seekers off the bat, but sometimes it feels like, wow, that person is doing what I wish I could do, and you try to figure it out from scratch when you could do what you did and just say, hey, how did you do it? Um, I've done that in my past as well, and it's always interesting to have those conversations. So really helpful reminder there, Lisa. Thank you for that one.
Yeah.
Now, kind of in your work in careers, I'm sure you're seeing kind of the job seekers of today try to navigate the workplace, and it's changing so quickly, like you're saying. So in terms of networking and finding people to talk to and have these conversations with, do you have any advice on how to start those conversations, or are you seeing anything that works for job seekers that have come across your path?
Yeah, that's a great question. I mean, I think this is an interesting time to be a job seeker. So I think it's always good to start with an acknowledgement of the world's in an interesting place, right? Things are
Yeah,
changing in the world, which means the world of work is being impacted. So I think we all do need to give ourselves a little bit of grace. Like, it's kind of tough out there. Let's just acknowledge that, right?
percent.
So we're not alone in that, there's some comfort. I do think networking is becoming increasingly more important with the increase in technology that companies are using in hiring. So, each company is using technology in a slightly different way. I wouldn't recommend for people to spend so much time worrying about trying to beat the system because every company is using it differently. So, a general understanding of how it works, great. But then, just assume that it's there and focus on the networking, which I see as more fruitful. So I think the core thing to remember there is being your authentic self when you show up, right? Not orchestrating who do I need to be? What do I need to say to want you to reach back out to me to give me a job, right? That's a very forced interaction.
Right.
People crave genuine connections. We are sort of communal people in life still, even with
Yeah.
technology, even if we're remote, right? And so that's the focus to me. If I'm looking at who to reach out to, do I actually want to talk to that person? If I don't really want to hear about their job, then I should not be reaching out. That probably means I shouldn't be trying to work there, right? And if we can lead with curiosity and authenticity, then it happens more naturally because all I have to say to you is, I would love to learn more about your experience in this company because it sounds really interesting to me. It doesn't have to be more orchestrated than that. And then I really genuinely want to hear what you have to say. I think we think of it too much as a game, and we're trying to mastermind a game of chess. And yes, I want to be strategic in, again, if I'm doing geography, I got to look at companies in that geography if I want to work in person, that kind of thing. But lead with genuine interest and it all just flows better because that's who I respond to. If I feel on LinkedIn, it's like a very canned response or someone just wants something from me, I'm less likely to respond than if they share what they're about and they know it's interesting to me, right? It's they've checked me out, they know that I'm in that field, or they look at my background and they say, I see that you do this. And I've had several people say, I want to transition into higher ed. I know you've been in higher ed, right? Just that. Yeah, they could send that note to many people in higher ed, but it means you at least looked at my profile. I'm much more likely to respond to that.
That's a great kind of guiding light there because I do think people do try to game the system like you're saying, and they'll send out, 1,000 resumes or connection requests, but they're very generic. They haven't spent the time to try to target a specific type of person that they're genuinely interested in talking to. And then they get discouraged that no one responded. But you
Right.
feel that, that authenticity for sure. And I know that's been something that I have developed over the years, and it's helped me make some great connections. I think it's part of why, we get to have this chat today because um, it does make a difference when you take the time to get to know the people you're trying to reach out to. And then you end up having some really interesting conversations out of it. So
Exactly.
that's really helpful. You also reminded me of a funny story about trying to game some of these new systems that are coming into place. I actually spoke to a hiring manager a couple of years ago that said they interviewed someone and only did because this person had put in the margins of their resume in white all the keywords of the job posting. I think they had actually copy and pasted the job posting into the resume, but it was essentially invisible. So they
Hmm.
bypassed the system. They got the job interview, but it became very obvious very quickly that they weren't qualified. And so even if you are successful gaming the system, it's going to catch up with you and
Yes.
and can have hugely negative consequences. So I do think, yeah, being genuine is such a good reminder, Lisa. And
Because
timely
there's
as
still
well.
people involved, right? That's the thing
Yeah,
to remember. The technology as it's being used today is on the front end, right? So to your example, maybe I get through, but then I still have to speak to a person to get a job. So if I fabricated, my level of expertise, it's going to come out. And then that's actually not getting me any closer to the end result. And I could think about how many hours did I spend doing that versus I could have just been focusing on finding the person I really wanted to talk to. So at the end of the day, that seems like not a good use of time in the end.
yeah, I completely agree. And there's an excitement to actually looking for the people that, could genuinely give you advice about the things you want to pursue. And I agree. I find more often than not, people do respond. They're excited to share
Mhm.
something that you're excited to learn about. And so once you kind of make that connection, you never know where it can go. And kind of leads me into my next question here, Lisa. So once you make that kind of connection, maybe it does lead, to an interview for a role where there's genuine interest. Are you noticing anything um, that job seekers are doing well? Is there something now you can do to stand out at the interview stage? Anything coming to mind around that?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think overall preparation is key.
True.
Um, so the people who really have done the research on the organization, that really stands out, especially on potentially where the organization is heading. So we have a lot of information, especially for publicly traded companies or, even private companies that post online. We can actually gain a lot of insight into what are their main pain points? Where is their industry going over the next couple of years? So anyone who can fold that information into an interview, likely you're only going to spend the time doing that research if you are really interested. So it again expresses interest, but it shows the company like one, I took the time for you. This is serious for me,
Right.
but wow, I can really help you. I've done more than just share my past experiences, which is what's going to prove, I have the skills you're looking for. I've taken it to that next level, and I can be the person who's going to help you make that next move. And with the access to so much information online, we can get a lot of that information. Even if we haven't been able to speak to somebody, right? We can get a lot of that info to make it feel very personal.
That is super helpful. And another perspective I haven't heard in any of these conversations yet. I think a lot of job seekers really focus on what they've done, and that makes total sense. But it makes a ton of sense to also talk about how you can help the company or that person reach some of the goals they've set. And it's true. If you do the research, you can figure out where they're trying to go. And who wouldn't want to hear that in an interview? You know, if I'm hiring someone, I want to know that, or if I heard someone say, "Hey, I know you're trying to accomplish this. Here's how I can help." No question they would stand out. So, really helpful insight on that one, Lisa. And on the flip side, are you noticing or have you come across anything that job seekers might be doing that they should avoid? Anything that might, be a red flag or something that they might not realize is hurting the interview process?
I notice a lot of people just don't practice interviewing. And just like all skills, we get better when we practice, right? And so, again, thinking from that employer perspective, they might have 10 questions they want to ask you. If you spend all of your time answering one or two questions, they've actually learned less about you than another candidate. So, really being able to curate your answers, then it could become more conversational if needed, but not trying to shove everything at them because, again, maybe they don't get to ask you about another element that's important. So, I would just say a lack of prep. We spend so much time, again, trying to get our resume perfect, all of that stuff. Hopefully, we've even added conversations. And then we just think, once I get to the interview, it's going to be no problem. But it also is a skill, and we also need to practice. And also, ask them questions, right? Be interested, make time to ask them questions, and send a follow up thank you note. A lot of that is a going away art, and it still matters every time I hear from people. They do track who took the time. It doesn't have to be handwritten because mail is slow, but send that email, take that extra effort. So it's really a bunch of little small things that when we do it will make an impact. And so many people just tell me that they don't.
Again, yeah, so tangibly. So those little things do make a difference. And I think if you follow some of the advice, if you for folks listening, if you follow some of this advice from Lisa, these things will sort of naturally compound. Because if you're genuinely interested in the person you're talking to, it makes total like why wouldn't you send a thank you for their time, right? That's someone that you were excited to talk to. They took the time to speak to you. It's only natural to reach out and thank them. And I would appreciate that as well. And I totally agree with what you're saying about, if you cast that super wide net, there are times I get it, you're in a survival situation, you need work.
Yes.
But if that's not the case, and you're casting that net wide and ending up in interviews where you're not passionate, the worst case scenario is almost you get the job. And now you're in a role you don't like. And that has so many negative consequences as well. So that's something to look out for. It's really not just about trying to get any job
Yes.
many times. It's, are you doing something you're excited about? Does it kind of align with your passion? Because that's where I think people really excel is when they get excited about what they're doing. So thanks for that
100%.
reminder as well, Lisa, big time.
Yeah.
Um, we touched on kind of tech a little bit just as this conversation unfolded, but one of the other questions I've been curious about is, are you seeing any opportunities in particular that are becoming more available for job seekers? Like, are there any advancements in the field, or are you seeing opportunities that maybe we should keep an eye on that may not have been there a few years ago? Whether it's specific jobs, specific industries that job seekers might not be aware of, but we could make them a little bit more aware of.
Yeah. I mean, I think definitely anything related to AI is growing. And I think that's the thing to remember about that is there are lots of different jobs related to that,
Yeah.
not just the engineer who's writing the code, right? Because there is that human element of how are we interpreting this information or how are we teaching other people how to use it. So a lot of executives and a lot of other career coaches that I follow, it really is the next world of work is everyone needs to know it and then be able to say how you're using it to supplement your work. So you might end up seeing the world be a who is okay and accepted it and figured out how to navigate it versus who hasn't. And you're seeing that in all industries. So I don't have to work in a tech company or in a startup for this to be impacting me. And so being able to basically embrace that, especially if you're an early career job seeker where not all education or formal education has caught up, but take a course, say that you have an understanding of it, show that you know how to use it or you know how to edit with it, right? So you know how to take it and move beyond or communicate using it as a supplement, not taking over. I think that's just growing into every industry, and even industries that haven't embraced it know that it's here to stay and are trying to figure it out. So I think it's regardless of whether or not our opinion of where it's going, it is here and impacting the world of work. So figuring out a way to fold that in, I think is really the thing I've seen the most.
Yeah, that's a really interesting insight as well. Just the human role that's going to be necessary to explain to people how AI works. It's so true. You don't necessarily have to be a prompt engineer or an engineer of any kind.
Right.
There's going to be this entire layer of people that explain to other people how these new AI tools work. So that's going to be an interesting one to keep an eye out for, everyone. So if you're like Lisa, and you enjoy working with people, um, learning a bit about AI so you can show the next person how it might be able to help them could be a really interesting role to keep an eye out for. I'm not sure what that job title will be yet.
Yeah, I don't know.
AI liaison or something
Right.
like that, but
It's
that's a
something where maybe somebody you can make up the job title, right? Like
true.
you can get the job and make it up as you go.
That's so true. Yeah, it's an interesting time for that kind of thing, honestly. And the last thing I wanted to just talk about is you mentioned that you're doing some work in the ed tech space. Um, do you mind telling us a little bit about that and how, job seekers or career staff might be able to leverage some of the tools you're developing?
Yeah, so there are a lot of tools in ed tech that I think are trying to bridge that. There are some great things about education. We all need to learn stuff, but there is not one right way to learn or one method. And so the company I work for is really focused on asynchronous learning with live components on sort of the back end. So I'm a live human there, still doing career coaching, but they're taking course content asynchronously. So it helps people, well, one, globally fit things into wherever they are globally and into their work. And it allows us to edit the courses more quickly than maybe a traditional education system could. But I've also seen a lot of ed tech companies working at making communication easier between K-12 teachers and parents, or again, distilling information for the person that needs maybe advanced learning or extra help at home that maybe they're not getting in a traditional setting. So I think with ed tech, you do see a lot of people who understand education in some way, but you also see a lot of people who understand all the other areas and product and marketing and finance. All the jobs are there. I would say it's one of those things where I just need to have an interest in innovating, right? So it's an industry where if I have an interest in innovating, there's a spot for me because that's really what ed tech as an industry is doing. So that's another thing for either younger job seekers or people who've started in one career and are ready for something new. You can look for those disruptors of any kind, and there are many, but that probably wasn't on your 20-year plan if you would have mapped it out.
So
But once you see a company and you think what they're doing is really interesting, maybe that's the sign that you need to go for that. So I think this whole industry is sort of trying to disrupt, establish, but disrupt some things, pick what's good and move it to the next level, leverage technology. I never studied anything about technology formally, but I can learn it as I go. So if you have a love of learning as well, I think that's a thing for job seekers too, is going in thinking, I'm not going to have learned everything I even want to learn at any point in time in my career. That can also spark a next move. So, look at what's exciting. It's a joy to go to work and be excited about what you're doing, and that's what I hope people can find. And so you have to recognize in yourself if you get a new interest or your industry has changed and now you want to elevate to something else. That's where I think we get the fun ebbs and flows that make for a fun story in the end, right?
100%. And another great reminder to kind of bring us to the end of the time we have here today, Lisa. I know we're coming up on it here, but that you don't have to know everything to get involved. You can learn along the way. I think so many people hold themselves back because they need to take one more course or they need to complete a degree or a master's or a PhD. And those are incredibly useful, qualifications to have, but you can jump in, you can learn as you go. And I think that's a completely valid approach as well. So I just want to thank you for your time today, Lisa.
Yeah,
I feel
thanks
like
for
we were
having me.
just getting started here. So hopefully we can have you back on in the future and continue to ask you questions and hear your insights and see kind of what happens next for you as well. But thank you again from all of us at our team and from the viewers as well. I'm sure they're going to learn a ton from your insights today. So really appreciate your time.
Yeah, thanks. It was fun.
Awesome. Well, we will talk to you soon and have a great day.
Bye.